This is a video about Jimmy Stewart, the actor, about the westerns he made, and about the horse Pie. Where on earth do you start with a video about Jimmy Stewart? And so really I'm not even going to go into a preamble. What I have to say is I have to limit this just to westerns. Jimmy Stewart, iconic figure, made over 90 movies, made his last movie when he was in his 80s, and he was the voice in the movie Favour Goes West, a cartoon. He was a voice in that, and he made many classic movies. Do not get sidetracked, Steve. So okay, we have to just stick to westerns. Even when it comes to westerns, he made 21 western movies, 90 odd movies, 21 of them were westerns. In 17 of those 21 westerns, he rode the same horse. Early on in his career, he heard about a horse that Audie Murphy had ridden in a couple of his westerns, and then he heard that this horse had almost killed Glenn Ford, that the horse took off out of control and headed straight for a tree, and Glenn Ford said he was dangerous. But he also heard from Kirk Douglas, who'd also ridden him, that it was just some sort of misunderstanding. Pie was actually a great horse. So he went and had a look at this horse and he really liked him. He was a sorrel, which is just what Cody is. And if you have a look at some photos of Pie, make sure you look at the right Pie, because there's two famous Pies. But if you look at Jimmy Stewart's Pie, you'll see he's a sorrel. His fringe is just like Cody's. He's got a white blaze just like Cody, even though his blaze is a little bit bigger than Cody's. So he really liked this horse. He really bonded with it. And he used this horse for 17 of his westerns over a period of 22 years. The very first time he used it in a movie that I've mentioned before. He used it in a movie I've mentioned before, 1950, Winchester 73, James Stewart. I criticised the movie once because of shooting a hole through a coin that already has a hole in it, but forget that. It's the first time Jimmy Stewart rode Pie, and he kept going with that 1950, and he kept going almost to the end of his career. He only made a couple of movies after 1970. 1970, Jimmy Stewart's last Cowboy movie with Pie. He used Pie for 22 years for his 17 westerns that he made on Pie. And the last one was in 1970 when he made the Cheyenne Social Club with Henry Fonda. He made that movie. Pie was an elderly horse in 1970. Pie was actually a bit unwell and had to be taken off shooting a couple of times while they were making the Cheyenne Social Club. What Jimmy Stewart didn't know is that while the horse was off recovering, Jimmy Stewart's co-star, Henry Fonda, who was a very keen and talented painter, went off and did an oil painting of Pie. When filming was over of the Cheyenne Social Club, Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart got together for a bit of a social gathering to celebrate that filming was over. When they got together, unbeknown, Henry Fonda presents Jimmy Stewart with this fabulous oil painting, beautiful oil painting that he'd done of Pie while Pie was in a bit of a hospital ward while they were filming the Cheyenne Social Club. This story I find incredibly emotional, that Henry Fonda did this painting of Pie on the set while they were filming Cheyenne Social Club, and 2 days after Henry Fonda gave Jimmy Stewart that oil painting, Pie passed away. Very sad. What was the story of Pie? His history of Pie. The history of Pie is pretty much lost. What a tragedy. And that is because They have tried to track down how many movies Pye was actually in, and they can't work it out. There are so many. They simply say Pye was in countless westerns. How did this come to be? That's because there was a wrangler. His name was Ed Myers, and he was rounding up working horses back in the day when the silent movie industry started. There was an actor called W.S. Hart and Tom Mix, and these two actors were the Clint Eastwood, the Tom Cruise of today, I guess. They were huge, huge, mega wealthy Hollywood superstars, and Ed Meyer was the wrangler and worked for those two guys. Where does the circle of all this? This video is ridiculous because Tom Hanks and W.S. Hart were both friends with Wyatt Earp. W.S. Hart was one of the pallbearers for Wyatt Earp. It's highly likely Ed Meyer knew Wyatt Earp. Ed Meyer had horses for the Hollywood silent movie industry. Ed Meyer had a daughter called Stevie. His daughter Stevie took over his horse business when she took it over. Her father said to her, Pye is a very special horse. Pye then went on to become Jimmy Stewart's much loved horse. Used for 22 years for 17 movies, died 2 days virtually after the shooting on the Cheyenne Social Club was over. What phenomenal history is that? Jimmy Stewart loved Pye so much, many times he asked Stevie Myers if he could buy Pye from her, and she refused. At the end, keep a grip of yourself, Steve, because at the end, when Pye died, okay, so we had to cut that out because I got a bit too emotional, and then when I got emotional, Cody comes up rubbing his nose in the middle of my back. That doesn't help, because when Pye died, 2 days after the shooting of Cheyenne Social Club finished, Jimmy Stewart approached Stevie Myers and said, now that Pye had passed away, could he be buried on Jimmy Stewart's ranch? And so that's what took place. Pye. How many bits of this do we have to cut out? Anyway, moving on. So what happens is sometime later, when Jimmy Stewart's nearly 90, an actor, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks goes and visits Jimmy Stewart. And when he goes there, he says to Jimmy Stewart, oh, I'm amazed. You've got no memorabilia. Where's all your memorabilia from all your years in movie making? And Jimmy Stewart says, well, I never kept anything. I was never interested in anything. I had a few scripts and a few bits and pieces, written letters and things. They didn't mean much to me, so I gave them to a museum. Oh, but hang on, I've got one thing I've kept. If you Google, you'll see a Jimmy Stewart in his late 80s posing with that oil painting that Henry Fonda made on the set of the Cheyenne Social Club. And that's the only memento of his acting career that Jimmy Stewart kept, was the oil painting of Pye. And you can see a photo of him posing with that on the internet. I'm going to try and download it, and I'll perhaps put it on my community page so that you can go to the community page and see that photo, that still photo. I didn't use it for the thumbnail because it would be lost on most people, even if it makes horse lovers get a tear in their eye. So I said there was 2 Pyes, not to get confused. So really quickly, hope we don't run out of time here. My camera cuts out after half an hour. But anyway, the other Pye that sometimes comes up on when you Google Pye, of course, is the horse from Elizabeth Taylor's National Velvet. That wasn't Pye at all, really. That horse was called King Charles, and it was used for the movie National Velvet. And in the movie, the original owner of Pie says he's a bad horse, he's a shocking horse, he keeps trying to escape, he'll never be any good, he's only good for pet food, and so he doesn't even warrant a name, he's just a damn pirate. So when Elizabeth Taylor gets this unnamed horse and hears he's a pirate, she calls him Pie. And the interesting thing about King Charles in the movie National Velvet is 15'3" high. And so when people are a bit harsh about Cody being small, mainly it's because I'm 6'3" and a hat and boots, and so perhaps he looks small. But in the movie, Pie, in the movie National Velvet, is 15'3". When the movie was over, Liz Taylor loved Pie so much from making National Velvet, she asked to keep the horse, which she did. She never rode him, but he went out to stud, lived his whole life with Elizabeth Taylor, had some famous offspring, and his granddaddy actually is also very famous, because just like Cody's great granddaddy is called Wimp, and you can look up Wimp on the internet and you will see Cody's great granddaddy. Well, likewise, in the movie National Velvet, King Charles, called Pie in the movie, his great granddad was Man o' War. Heck of a racehorse, Man o' War. So what we're going to do now, there are lots and lots of great stories about Jimmy Stewart. I was going to say he doesn't like this shirt, but actually I think he likes it because he wants to eat it. There are lots and lots of great stories about Jimmy Stewart in his westerns, always with Pie. And the one story, the great story, is there's a movie, A Far Country, and in that movie, Jimmy Stewart is going to try and trick the outlaws, and he's going to sneak around to he's going to head him off at the pass. He's going to sneak around. But what he needs is his horse to have a little bell on the saddle and to ride at night, ride down the middle of the main street, clip clop, tinkle, tinkle, tinkle. So the bad guys think Jimmy Stewart's riding down the street, but it's not. Jimmy Stewart's sneaking around. The horse is riding down by itself. Famous scene, famous in horse history, because the story goes that Jimmy Stewart said to the director said, "Do you reckon the horse can do it? How can we do it?" Jimmy Stewart said, "Give me a couple of minutes. I'll whisper in his ear. I'll tell him what to do, and he'll just do it." The director didn't believe him. Jimmy Stewart took the horse aside, whispered for a few minutes in his ear, let him go, cameras rolling, and the horse just walked straight down the street, exactly how it was supposed to happen. First take, first time, boom, done. So Jimmy Stewart said through the whole time he ever rode Pie, the horse knew when he was on camera. He knew how to behave. He would see the red light come on a camera. His ears would flick towards that red light, and he always did exactly what he was asked to do. So that's the story about Pie and one of his famous scenes, A Far Country. One take, right? So what we're going to do, goodness knows how this will work. I am now going to take Cody back here, and I'm going to take his lead rope off, and I'm going to tell him to walk across in front of us, and we'll see how it goes. Who knows? No promises. Come on, mate, we're going to have a shot at this. See if you can do what Pie did. Come on, see if you can do what Pie did. So we're going to come up here. We're going to come up here. So what happened in the movie? Come round, mate. Come round. Come round. Come round. Come round. Come round. Come round. So what we're going to do? I swear there's no one else here. My wife's not even here. There's no one else here. Go to the back. Oh, go to the back. 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 Go. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Walk on. Fair income. We had never practiced that. We had never practiced that once. We had never rehearsed that once. I think a man's about to burst into bloody tears. That's what happened in The Far Country. Jimmy Stewart said he just told the horse what to do. And the horse walked down the street. I looked for a bell to put a bell on his saddle. Let's not go ridiculous lengths, okay? I'm just an old man making movies at home. Till we meet again, love that horse.